Today's episode is brought to you by Positively Productive Systems, whose mission is to be the antidote to your stress and to provide compassionate productivity resources and coaching that help you heal and achieve. Be sure to check out both free and paid resources at positivelyproductive.com/resources. Not every negative thought is a bad thought per se. And if we don't allow it to flow through us and to be acknowledged, it could very well get out of hand. We also don't want to live in constant growing guilt for even having these feelings. The story shows us that we all experience it. And acceptance of this is so important because we deserve to accept it and to allow ourselves to feel what we feel. And really, this is the only way to truly heal. You're listening to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zawrotny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping overwhelmed clients make space for what matters. Join me each episode as we explore ways to live a more proactive, productive life with topics and guests that speak to simplifying self-awareness, systems, and so much more. I understand overwhelm personally as a fellow multi-passionate entrepreneur, wife and mom to kids and cats, and former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Welcome to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa, and I'm known for feeding people as a way to show love. Just ask my family. But because I can't cook for you directly, today, I'm showing you love by encouraging you to feed your inner self the right way. And today we're using a parable that has been making the rounds for quite some time, The Tale of Two Wolves. Have you heard it? It's a conversation between a grandfather and a grandchild. The details of the story vary, including it being a grandson or granddaughter, and it's often attributed to the Cherokee and Lenape tribes, and it goes by different titles. Here's the core story. I have a fight going on in me, the old man said. It's taking place between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The grandfather looked at the grandchild and went on. The other embodies positive emotions. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. Both wolves are fighting to the death. The same fight is going on inside you and every other person too. The grandchild took a moment to reflect on this. At last, looking up at the grandfather, asks, "Which wolf will win?" The elder gave a simple reply, "The one you feed." Do you recognize it? This parable, sometimes titled as "The One You Feed," uses the metaphor of two wolves fighting to explain our inner conflicts. Because it hasn't been attributed to a specific author, I haven't been able to confirm where it originated. But it's a powerful message and has been referenced in tons of different media, from Daredevil comics to Star Trek to John Wick. I also want to give a shout out to fellow podcaster Eric Zimmer, who named his podcast The One You Feed, and is dedicated to sharing meaningful discussions about ways to manage life's challenges. The story is an amazing jumping off point for such discussions, but I have more I want to share about it before we dig in. If you caught the episode with Mike Montague about being a jack of all trades, you might recall how I shared the remainder of that phrase beyond master of none. So instead of just jack of all trades, master of none, there was more to it. You have to listen to that episode to find out what that was. But so many times we learn these sayings and we learn them wrong or only portions of it. We learn something out of context, and sometimes urban legend and different derivations take over. And in this case, we have an alternate ending. Are you ready for it? When the grandchild asks, "Who will win?" the elder replies, "They both win if you feed them right. You see, if I starve one wolf, the other will become imbalanced with power. If I choose to feed only the light wolf, the shadow one will become ravenous and resentful. He will hide around every corner and wait for my defenses to lower and then attack. He'll be filled with hatred and jealousy and will fight the light wolf endlessly. But if I feed both in the right way at the right time, they will live side by side in harmony. There will be no more inner battle. Instead, there will be inner peace. And when there's peace, there is wisdom. The goal of life is to respect this balance of life, for when you live in balance, you can serve the Great Spirit within. When you put an end to the battle inside, you are free. I'll give you a moment to let that one sink in. It makes you think, right? Regardless of the ending, this is a reminder of duality in our lives, the yin and the yang, the light and the dark, the push and the pull. First, we must accept that there is this duality, and next, we must figure out how to address it. You might expect that the first version of Feeding the Good would be my choice based on a podcast called Positively Living. And we'll get to that, but I want to focus on the alternate ending first and how the feeding of both means acknowledging and caring for what we perceive as negative too. It's compassionate and it's clever. When we talk about our inner voice, we can see it as negative sometimes, many times probably, and I get that because mine's been an inner mean girl to me many times before. Yet when we dig in deep, we can see that the voice is sometimes trying to protect us, and other times it's simply an echo, repeating words that we've heard or been taught. Our inner voice comes from many places: perceptions taught by family and society, responses to traumas, repeated stories we didn't know to question. It's an amalgam of things we've yet to process, and it's important information. Not every negative thought is a bad thought per se. And if we don't allow it to flow through us and to be acknowledged, it could very well get out of hand. We also don't want to live in constant growing guilt for even having these feelings. The story shows us that we all experience it. And acceptance of this is so important because we deserve to accept it and to allow ourselves to feel what we feel. And really, this is the only way to truly heal. We've talked about worth and our emotions in a number of episodes now. I have to give a shout out to Mallory Jackson for what she shared about our worth in our number one downloaded episode of all time, number 53, Am I Codependent? Spoiler alert, we all are. And she explains really well how that is and what we can do about it. But when I think about this topic in terms of the positivity side and dealing with that, my good friend and fellow coach, Valerie Friedlander, comes to mind. She's joined me twice on the podcast now in episode 8 and 114 to discuss toxic positivity and other harmful mindset approaches and advises us so well on how to guide and nurture that inner voice, especially when it's mean. And in episode 99 with Kristen Kubik, we talked about the importance of creating space for yourself to process emotions in a society that doesn't always support that. That's what we're talking about today. Creating that space so that we can acknowledge, understand, feel, and heal. And the common theme in all of these conversations is self-compassion. I'm reminded of a quote by Tiny Buddha author Lori Deschênes. It's one of my favorites. We can't hate ourselves into a version of ourselves we can love. Self-compassion is critical for us to heal and to change and will only work with its companion, self-acceptance. That inner voice of yours is probably not known for either, is it? Too often, you hear thoughts like, I'm so stupid. What was I thinking? I'll never get this. Who am I to deserve this? And so much more. The way to move beyond those is not to fight them, but to seek to understand them. You know how it feels when someone tries to understand where you're coming from? You feel respected, right? We need to do the same for ourselves and those thoughts. Remember that staying curious keeps the judgment at bay. Your first steps are to pay attention to what your inner voice is saying and catch yourself, and then ask, Why do I think that? Why did I say that? Where did that come from? You may not have the answers at first, and that's fine. It's just about questioning it to start. And when you start questioning, it helps you remove the automated approach of just allowing it to happen. And then you create space for reflection, just like we talked about in episode 136. We need to take the time to reflect on what's going on, to ask why. And as you reflect, I want you to add one more question for those inner thoughts. Ask yourself, would I talk to someone I love like that? As I close this episode, I want to reiterate that I believe feeding both wolves, so to speak, will truly enhance your life. You are feeding the struggling one with compassion and understanding and encouragement. And you are feeding the kind, loving, happy, joyful one with gratitude and appreciation. What you focus on, you fuel. And of course you want to fuel and grow that, right? But when you realize both wolves are really one, really you can see the balance and harmony that comes from nurturing and appreciating both. It may feel counterintuitive at first, but it's a reminder that no matter the question, no matter the side, love is a good answer, especially turned inward. Now it's time for you to reflect and consider what your inner voice is telling you. And if you would use your outer voice to share that with me, I'd be honored. I'd love to know what you thought about this episode, what you've spotted in terms of your inner voice, how you've been feeding both parts. And if you found value in this episode and practice, please do review and share it. I'd be so grateful. Thank you, as always, for being here with me. Our time together feeds the joy in my life more than I can express. Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious and limited, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback, questions, or want to schedule a chat, head to positivelyproductive.com/connect. And if you are looking for any of the resources referenced on the podcast, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.